Evaluating AI, it can feel like some kind of dark art, right? Like it's all magic. But what if I told you it's actually a craft, something you can learn? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to demystify the whole thing by breaking down the 5 essential moves that the pros use to make sure AI actually works. Come on, you've seen this happen, right? A brand new feature, it works perfectly in testing, and then the second it gets in front of real users, it just fails, completely falls apart. It starts making these weird, bizarre mistakes, and nobody can figure out why. It's an incredibly frustrating and super common problem. And that gap, right there, the one between the clean, perfect data in the lab and the messy, unpredictable real world, that is AI's biggest challenge. It's the whole reason why having a real, systematic way to evaluate this stuff isn't just a nice to have, it's absolutely essential. So, how do we actually bridge that gap? Well, not with guesswork, that's for sure. You need a playbook. And that's what we're going to walk through. 5 fundamental techniques, or moves, that are pretty much the core of any AI quality program that actually works. Okay, but before we even dive into move 1, there's something we have to talk about. I call it move 0. And look, it's going to sound super obvious, but you absolutely have to be able to see what your system is doing. I mean, if you can't even look at the outputs, how are you supposed to evaluate it? You can't. It's the foundation for everything else we're about to discuss. So, just how important are these moves? Well, get this. It's estimated that something like 87% of all the real, practical, day-to-day work of evaluating AI, it just comes down to these 5 things. So this isn't some abstract theory. This is the core of the craft. All right, so here they are, the 5 moves. This is our roadmap for today. We're going to start by breaking down the first couple of techniques. And these are all about finding the problems that are already lurking in the data you have right now. Yep, our first 2 moves are basically forensics. Think of it like being a detective. You're analyzing your system's performance as it is right now to uncover issues that might be hiding in plain sight. All right, move 1. This is the bedrock of all evaluation. Run and compare. It's simple, really. You run your system on a standard set of tests. We call that a benchmark. And then, and this is the crucial part, you compare how it did against something else, some kind of meaningful baseline. But compare against what? That's the key question, isn't it? Well, you could compare it against an older version of your own system. That tells you if you've made things worse. You could compare it against a competitor, so you know where you stand in the market. Or, and this is a big one, you can compare it to how a human does the same task. That tells you if your AI is even adding any value at all. Okay, so you've got your baseline comparison. But what if that big overall score is kind of misleading? That's where move 2 comes in. Slice and inspect. This is where you really put on your detective hat. Because, an overall accuracy of, say, 91%, that sounds awesome, but it can easily be hiding some really serious, maybe even dangerous flaws. And you can slice your data by just about anything that matters. You could look at different user demographics, or maybe split between new users and power users. Or what about slicing by the type of questions someone is asking? The whole point is to find these little subgroups where the performance is way different, and maybe dangerously so. This is how you find those hidden failures. I mean, imagine you have a model that decides who gets a loan. Its overall accuracy is great. But then you slice the data by location, and you find out it's systematically failing applicants from certain zip codes. You would never have caught that just by looking at the big average number. The aggregate metric, as they say, was just covering it all up. So those first 2 moves, they're all about what's already happened. Now we're going to switch gears. Our next move is all about what could happen. This is where we get proactive. It's time to stress test the system. Move 3 is simulate and score. What you're doing here is creating these made-up scenarios. Weird edge cases, people trying to trick the system. Just absolute worst-case situations, all to see how your AI holds up under pressure. Your normal data probably doesn't have this stuff in it, so you literally have to invent it. So for a chatbot, you'd pretend to be a user trying to jailbreak it. For a customer service bot, you'd simulate the angriest, most off-the-wall customer you can possibly imagine. These kinds of stress tests are so, so important because they let you see exactly how your system breaks before it gets a chance to do it in front of a real paying customer. Okay, so finding the problems, that's only half the battle, right? The last 2 moves are all about what you do next. This is how you stop just doing one-off checks and actually turn this into a real cycle of continuous improvement. And that brings us to move 4. Integrate and monitor. Let me give you a hard truth about AI. These models, they do not age like fine wine. They get stale. The world changes, people start acting differently. It's a thing called data drift, and suddenly your amazing model starts making bad calls. Monitoring is your early warning system. It catches that drift before it blows up into a full-blown crisis. And finally, move 5, escalate and learn. This might be the most important one because it's what stops you from fixing the same problem again and again and again. It's about building a system to make sure that every time you find an issue, it gets fixed and the lesson you learned gets baked into your process for good. Let me show you how this loop works in practice. So, imagine your fraud model misses some brand new type of attack. First, you escalate. You let the right people know about the financial risks so they fix it like right now. Then you learn. You take that exact attack pattern and you add it to your permanent set of tests. And just like that specific failure can never sneak by you again. So when you put all 5 of these moves together, what you have isn't just some boring checklist. You have a complete repeating playbook for managing AI quality, from the very beginning of development all the way through to when it's live. And you can see here how it all just flows together in this continuous loop. You run your tests, you inspect the results, you simulate what might happen in the future, then you monitor it out in the real world. And here's the magic. Every single time you find something, you escalate it and you learn from it. And that makes your next round of evaluation even stronger. That's how you go from a checklist to a real systematic craft. Now look, doing all this, it isn't free. Of course not. It takes time, it takes resources. But let me tell you, the cost of not doing it is almost always way, way higher. A single safety failure, one big scandal, that can cost you so much more than your entire evaluation budget for a year. Seriously, just think of it as cheap insurance against a total disaster. All right, let's do a super quick recap. You've got run and compare. That's to know where you stand. Slice and inspect to find those hidden problems. Simulate and score to test for what could happen. Integrate and monitor to catch issues out in the wild. And finally, escalate and learn to turn all those findings into actual lasting improvement. And that brings me to one final question for you to think about. Pick an AI you use every single day. Could be a recommendation engine, a chatbot, whatever. Now that you know the playbook, which of these 5 moves do you think, or maybe even suspect, its creators are skipping? And more importantly, what kinds of risks does that create for you, the user?